Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Barbara Beckworth, and on behalf of the Governmental Affairs Committee of Dixon Chamber of Commerce, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Candidates Forum. We appreciate your being here, and since this event is being televised, we welcome those of you viewing at home. We also welcome members of the civics class that have arrived. We'll welcome them later. Tonight's forum is featuring candidates vying for the California 3rd Congressional District seat. We'll be hearing from candidates John Garamendi, Eugene Ray, Rick Tubbs, and Kim Pham. Before we begin, may I please ask that you turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate. Thank you. The format for this evening will be as follows. The order of speaking has been determined by lottery. We'll start with opening remarks from each candidate. Remarks will be limited to 5 minutes each. Following this presentation, you in the audience may submit written questions directed to a specific candidate or to all candidates. Pencils and index cards are available for your questions, and we ask that you please write only one question per card. And please write as legible as possible. During this time, the candidates will be asked to answer a few pertinent questions that have been submitted by the Government Affairs Committee. And following this segment, we'll have a short 5-minute break. Half of the question and answer period will be devoted to an oral portion in which you are invited to ask your questions at this open mic. The question and answer period will last for 60 minutes, evenly divided between written questions and oral questions, with individual responses limited to 2 minutes. We will end with closing remarks by each candidate, with each of their remarks limited to 3 minutes. The speaking order will be in the reverse of the opening remarks. And the first one is Rick. Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker tonight will be Rick Tubbs.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you for being a part of this democratic process that we enjoy and are blessed with here in America. Tonight, you get to hear from all 4 candidates. We're missing one, but you get to hear from 4 of us tonight on why we want to represent you. And at the end of the night, it is my hope that you have a good conclusion, a decision tonight, that yes, that is the man or woman that I want to be my voice in Washington. And I'm going to make my best case to you to be your voice there. And so, not right now, but at the end of the night, after you've heard me speak, it is my hope that I earn your support tonight and that you will be voting for me and helping me to be that voice for you in Washington. Now, why do I think I'm a good candidate? Why do I think I do a good job for you? Let me start a little bit with who I am, where I come from, and some of the experiences I've had before today. There's a lot of new faces in the audience, although there's several that I know. But I grew up in a one-stop sign town in Wisconsin. Grew up on welfare with a mom and a sister. And from those humble beginnings, I was fortunate enough to earn a military scholarship to go to California State University of Fresno and earn a degree in mathematics. It was on the final weekend of my college career that I was commissioned in the Air Force, graduated, and then married my wife of the last 22, almost 23 years, sitting in front here today, Kristen. From there, I went into the Air Force and flew airplanes in Texas for about 5 years. And then thankfully came back to California, moving to Vacaville in 1995. Did a few more years active duty, left the full-time Air Force, went over to the reserves, stayed at Trappist Air Force Base, and then was hired by United Airlines flying out of San Francisco since about 1999. During that time, and it was kind of neat last night after another debate we had in Fairfield, or Vacaville, with the Fairfield, Vacaville, and Sassoon Chambers. I was at Denny's with the after, debate party, whatever you want to call it, and I looked at one of the fellas there that I happened to talk to that was asking about it, and I said, I'm just an ordinary guy. But I've had some extraordinary experiences that have prepared me to be your voice, to represent you in Washington. And some of those experiences, one, I'm a family man. I've got 3 teenagers. sisters. My oldest sitting right here. My two youngest are home sick, unfortunately. But I'm a family man first, and a man of faith first, I should say, then family man. And I've done things like run a small business with my wife and dealt with the regulatory environment that is crushing some of our businesses and strangling jobs in this country and keeping us back. I've worked on military budgets, many of them, one right now that is nearly $20 million, and balanced those budgets over and over again. It is my job in the Air Force to do that. And I think it is the job of our congressmen and women out there to do that as well. But also in there, I've been a union member. Something that, as a Republican, which I am, and proud of it, but with some of the experiences I've had, my experiences come from all around the backgrounds. You know, whether it's growing up on welfare, being a union member, military, small business, I really understand issues from many sides. Going forward from there, I ran in 2010 for Congress in my district. It was District 7, included Vacaville back then, and went west. Unfortunately, didn't have the pleasure of coming out to Dixon and winning your vote. But I ran for Congress back then and learned a lot. It was a very Democratic district, 3-1 Democrat to Republican. And although I believe very much in the solutions that I'm going to bring up tonight as good solutions, I had to make sure that as I was trying to win votes from all sides of the aisle, I had to make sure that I explained them in a way that was nonpartisan. Because I don't believe solutions should be partisan. They should be what's best for Americans. And I'm going to throw one more little caveat in there about why I feel so strongly about my role as your congressman. Because when I was activated to go to war in 2003, my wife and I were actually working on a little apartment complex, and I got the phone call, you're activated. I went to war, and I protected all Americans, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. It didn't matter to me, and it won't matter to me as your congressman. I represent you. Tonight, I'm going to speak about specific solutions. I want you to know where I'm coming from and what I'll do when I go forward as your congressman, so you know that what you hear tonight is something you like or you not like, so you can make a good decision. So please ask those questions. My time is up. Man, that goes fast. Thank you very much.
Let's go here from Eugene Ray.
That doesn't start till I get there, does it?
No.
I'm very slow.
Till you get up there.
They work better. Refer to my notes. Take off my glasses so I can see. Stop getting old. My name's Eugene Ray. My family moved to Vacaville in 1954. My dad opened up the prison there. I've been in real estate for almost 35 years now. I'm an 8th degree black belt with the world karate champion. And I did work with at-risk kids, doing outreach programs out of churches for a few years, and we were pretty successful at it. A guy said to me the other day, you know, the discrepancy between the highest and the lowest wage earners in America is a great system of betting. And I said, my goal is not to pull the top down, my goal is to pull the bottom up. America didn't become the greatest nation in the history of the world by penalizing success. They became the greatest nation by making opportunities available for the middle and lower class to work their way up if they wanted to. My first order of business would be to get America back to work. John F. Kennedy said, a rising tide floats all boats. We get people back to work, get money flowing, get things work, get things happen. We've got money to work with. And there's a way to get over 3 million people back to work in less than 24 months, without stimulus or any other government money, to get people off unemployment and welfare checks and back on payroll checks. The 3 areas on target. First one is the American energy industry with a comprehensive plan that includes increased production for American energy independence, improvement on existing energy sources, and continued development of renewable sources. Renewables are a great idea, but they're not ready for prime time. In the meantime, we've got like in North Dakota, where they've opened up some oil fields up there. Less than 3% unemployment up there. The people are living in their cars because they can't build houses and motels fast enough. They can employ over 1 million people just in gas or just in oil alone, let alone nuclear, natural gas, coal, that type of thing. There's many things that we could do. The American housing industry. The explosion in the American housing industry was caused by a handful of politicians that went to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and told them to make loans to people that couldn't afford them. And then Wall Street bundled them up and hid the bad loans with the good loans, gave blanks, and the whole program took off. Ever since that problem, the legislature or the Congress has been trying to solve the problem, but they won't admit what the original problem was, and so everything they try to solve wasn't the original problem, so they just made it worse. Mostly on that, what I've done to do it. Small business. I go after small business. Large business, businesses with over 500 people over the last 15 years have created 1.8 million jobs. That's impressive. But small business, businesses with less than 500 people have created 21.9 million jobs. They are job-producing machines. It's almost $1.5 million a year. The main thing we have to do is be covered off their back with regulations and taxes are killing them and let them go to work. Okay? We get more people off, or more people back to work and off entitlements. We have less government money going out, more tax dollars are coming in. Then we go after the deficit. There's no reason that America spends 40 cents on every dollar that it spends. That's silly. We're the richest nation in the history of the world. We spend 40 cents on every dollar we spend. The interest on our debt alone is over $1 billion a day. Can you imagine what America could do with an extra $1 billion a day? That's crazy. The other thing is we cannot leave this mess for our kids. That would just be wrong. For us to create this and leave this for our kids, our grandkids, to have to clean up. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are on schedule to bankrupt by the year 2021 or 2025. I haven't reviewed the current Republican bill, but if it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll do something else. But something's got to be done. When you're on course for bankruptcy, doing nothing is not an option. Okay? We have to make sure the necessary programs are available, not just for seniors today, but for the coming generations of seniors as they go. We have to stretch it correctly. Military. You have to have a strong military to protect America. This is not a time to cut back on our ability to defend ourselves. China and Russia are gearing up. They're beefing up their military. North Korea and Iran are stretching their legs and trying to see just how strong they are and how much they can get away with. A lot of it is perspective when you're dealing with foreign countries. Farming. I don't know about you, but I've gotten used to eating and I kind of like it. So the American farmer feeds a huge percentage of the world's population. We need to keep the American farmer in business, especially the family farmer. I will repeal Obamacare. We do need to do some work with health care because it is too expensive for what we've got, and some other issues need to be taken care of. But there are three big issues with Obamacare that jump out at me right away. One is Obama's own advisors have told him that Obamacare will bankrupt the country. Two, the first thing that Congress did after they passed it was exempt themselves. Three, over 2,000 waivers have been handed out to over 4 million people since Obamacare passed for unions and major Democratic supporters. If Obamacare is such a great deal, why are all these people with influence running off the ship? Doesn't make any sense. We need to take a positive approach in getting America back to work, growing and building again. We need people in Washington that can solve problems, find areas of agreement, and build solutions. It has to be someone who can articulate that so that the politicians and the American people can see the bigger picture and all get on the same page with it. If I sit down with a Republican, Democrat, Independent, Environmentalist, I don't care who it is, if I sit down with somebody, I will find, in 5 or 10 minutes, I'll find something we can agree on. And from there, I'll start to build a solution and solve some problems. I can do that here, I can do it in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Van.
Quite sure I was going to pick between the podium and all that. Good evening. Thank you all so much for joining us here this evening. It's a privilege to be able to speak to this organization and to the city of Dixon. I have a question for everyone. By a show of hands, how many of you truly believed that your grandparents thought they were leaving a better America to your parents? How many of you believed that your parents thought they were leaving a better America to you? Now, how many of us in here can say that we are absolutely leaving a better America to our children? I see a couple hands go up. When I looked around the room, we all know how hard our parents and our grandparents worked to create this wonderful America that we have, the best country in the world. But we have a cycle of failure in Washington, D.C. that is going to harm the greatest country in the world. I have this 9-year-old son, and I look at him and I think, does the future have the same opportunities that it had for me, or for my parents, or for my grandparents? The resounding answer to that question for me, and I think for many of you, is no. And I'm running for Congress to provide a better America for my grandparents that are still with us, my parents, our generation, our children, and our future generations. We have got to set the tone for jobs in this country. The promises that were made are not being lived up to. The job market is not getting any better for Americans. We have national debt and spending that is out of control. We have got to rein in the spending and get things to a place where we can grow the economy. We have national security issues. We need to protect and enhance our national security. And the two wonderful bases that are in this district are integral to that. We have to do serious regulatory reform. We've got to start tracking and monitoring regulations that are harming our small and medium-sized businesses and start repealing them. And not only repealing the funding, but repealing the mandate as well. Last but not least, we cannot give up on this wonderful country. I'm willing to put my private sector career on the line and my public sector career as a county supervisor, which has been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done, to fight for a better America. Because I know how important it is for our future of our children. I know that we can no longer hope for things to be different. We need to be involved. And all of you here today show your involvement just by participating and being here. Our small businesses in the 3rd Congressional District are suffering. All the way from our ag industry to our mom and pop store in downtown Main Street. I visited with the Dixon Downtown Business Association a few weeks ago, and we went through some of the things that the Dixon community is facing. It's no different than any of our other communities in this district are facing. As a county supervisor, we were able to get the state and the federal government out of the way and build one of the largest power plants in this state. A 650 megawatt cogen power plant. It was a $900 billion project. We got ourselves out of the way too. It created jobs in the construction industry, and it created permanent jobs, and it created a needed source of energy for the state. Those are the type of policies, and that is the type of leadership that I have demonstrated on the local level, and that I will take to Washington to serve all of you. Thank you very much for having me here this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to be back here in Dixon. We'll be back, all of us, I think, in a couple of weeks for the Mayfair. One of the more exciting things that go on in this part of the world, one that my wife, when she was the deputy general manager of the California State Fair, found great jealousy about your Dixon Mayfair. She always had the best entertainment and the best programs here. This district, the 3rd District, is one of the most exciting districts in all of America. It stretches 200 miles up the Sacramento River. And when you move beyond this district and you look out across this incredible country, this place we call our home, this America that is our land, you have to come to the conclusion that we are indeed very, very fortunate. We ask ourselves, what is America? Well, it's us. Immigrants from all over the world. People that have settled here, people that have worked hard, people that have struggled and succeeded. We're a diverse country. We're a democracy. And we have elections. And that's a process that's enjoyable and is terribly, terribly important. We stretch 3,000 miles. We stretch across the oceans. We're a capitalistic economy, but we're an economy that also depends in a relationship, private-public relationship with government. And as we look at this country, we go, we're blessed in many, many ways. But at the same time, we know that in the last 3 years, 4 years now, beginning in 2007, this country's had its troubles. We've had the Great Recession. We can debate forever why it happened. The facts are out there. But the real question is, what do we do from here? How do we move this country forward? And I will tell you, I have one very, very simple, but very, very important way of describing what my task is as your current congressman and hopefully your future congressman. And it's a 4-letter word. It's jobs. It's the creation of jobs. How do we create jobs here in America? And how, in doing that, can we restore the American dream? And I would put to you that there is a way to do it. There is a way to reignite the American dream. And it's going to take us some time, and it's something that we did in the past, and we can and must do again in the future. The reigniting of the American dream is dependent on 5 things. And here they are, and this is my mantra for the last 25 years in public life. First of all, the very best education system in the world, because you must have the best educated workforce in the world if you're going to succeed as an economy and as a just society. Secondly, you have to have the best research in the world, and there is no place in the world that is so fortunate as this part of the world with its research facilities. I currently represent an arc of research that is unparalleled anywhere in the world. Sandia Labs, Livermore National Labs, the Berkeley campus, the Berkeley Labs, and just a few miles north of here, the University of California at Davis. Incredible research in every conceivable field, from high-energy physics to all of agriculture. Thirdly, you've got to make things. Manufacturing is the way you add value. You create wealth with manufacturing. We're not talking about financial engineering, which doesn't create wealth. It simply moves the numbers around. We're talking about making things. Whether it's making an agricultural product from a rice field or walnuts, or making things from the technology that you find in our laboratories. The biotech fuels, the new businesses are developing around here as a result of the research. Manufacturing matters. It's the creation of wealth. Fourth, you have to have the infrastructure. You need the roads, the transportation systems, the rail systems, airports, water systems, flood control systems, and the communication systems. Upon that foundation, you then can build your economy and your society. And finally, you have to have a strong, viable, agile, mobile, lethal, and very, very effective national defense. Those are the 5 things that drive me in this job. And when I go to Washington, as I do my work, I always keep those 5 things in mind: education, research, manufacturing, infrastructure, and our national defense. That's my task. In doing those things, we will create the jobs that we must have if this country is going to move forward and solve its multitude of problems. Thank you. I look forward to this evening. I look forward to your support. And I thank you so very much for the privilege of representing you these last nearly 3 years. Thank you.
This concludes the first portion of the program, and now's the time you can turn in your questions to any one of the committee members. During this interval, we'll have the opportunity to ask a few questions of the candidates that have been submitted by the Governmental Affairs Committee. The gentleman asking these questions will be our Chamber President, Bert Dahl.
Candidates, we have a few questions that will be directed to all of you. You'll each have 2 minutes to answer the question. Please raise your hand when you are ready to answer. The first answer we are looking for is, do you believe the government should be involved in attempting to reduce the price of gasoline? If yes, what should be done? If no, why?
Be happy to try to answer that question. Yes, the government has to be involved in the price of gasoline. For example, making sure that we have adequate drilling. In the last 4 years, we have more oil drilling in America than we had in the previous 8 years before that. So there are things that are done. That is, the making available for lease for the development of oil, for the private sector to develop those gas and oil drills. We now have a surplus of natural gas as a result of research that was done by the U.S. government, the U.S. Geological Survey. It's called fracking. It can work well when it's in the right place at the right time. That's an involvement of government in this process. We also need to understand that right now the American oil companies are exporting 26 million gallons of gasoline a day. Should they be allowed to do that when we see apparent shortage of gasoline and ever-increasing gasoline prices? We also know the government's involved in the strategic oil reserve, making that available, opening it when it's necessary and not. Bottom line here is there's an appropriate role for government in this process, and that is now underway. Thank you.
So you'll be more comfortable. You can all stay seated to answer these questions.
Whichever makes you more comfortable. Next, go ahead, Kim.
The government does need to play a role in natural resources, gas, oil, natural gas. Their first role needs to be getting our own regulatory policies out of the way. We are in constant need of additional supply of oil. Price fixing the market isn't the solution. Oil is a global commodity, and any additional regulatory costs are going to be passed on to us, the domestic consumer, not to the consumer overseas. So government does need to be involved in removing ourselves from some of it, first off. We need to be able to be proactive in drilling, in research and development. And again, some of the policies that influence projects such as Keystone need to be looked at more carefully and scrutinized so that we can do more development and actually do projects, not just study and research them, but do them to produce more product.
Eugene.
I agree with John on this, that you do need some government involvement. I mean, I'm one of those people that, it's pretty much, the government should just be a referee and stay back and make sure the game's played fair and played well and give everybody a chance to succeed and don't try to pick who wins and loses. But on this one, when you're talking about something as important as oil and the necessity that we have for it, I don't think there's any question, one, that we need to open up more drilling for, one, the jobs and for more energy independence that we need from foreign oil in the event that something global broke out. But I have a little bit of an issue when people in America are paying $4 or $5 a gallon, and you find out that because we had a mild winter and they didn't use as much heating oil back east as they normally do, that it's not because we're short oil, it's because oil companies are shipping our oil overseas. I'm not really excited about that. I think we can sit down and we'll talk about it. I'm not all for getting in their business, but we need to have a little conversation about how things are working.
And the question about government should actively pursue reducing the cost of gas, and this is where my conservative values come out. Government shouldn't be setting prices, doing things that are going to meddle in the market in terms of price fixing or something like that. It can get out of the way so that oil and gas are cheaper, and they certainly need to do that. You know, President Obama is so fond of blaming President Bush for so many things. Well, the drilling we have now are due to the leases that under his administration were approved. It takes a while to go from a lease to a drill to a production. So let's blame Bush for that. We have to get out of the way. And another thing that causes oil and gas to go up is the dollar. As the value of the dollar goes down, thanks to the incredible amount of borrowing that our government is doing, gas goes up. So government interference in the market, no. However, smart policies, responsible government that doesn't cause the value of the dollar to go down by balancing our budget and keeping the dollar value high, as well as deregulating and signing leases so that we have more production 4 years from now, is the way that government can get out of the way to make sure gas is cheap for us, normal citizens.
Okay, thank you all. The next question. Do you propose any modifications to the sequestration bill passed by Congress that, according to Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, will decimate our military starting in January 2013?
As you probably know, I'm on the House Armed Services Committee, where that issue comes squarely before us. And we've had 5 hearings on the sequestration issue. In looking at those 5 hearings, basically very little has been done by that committee in doing detailed analysis on what can be done and what should not be done. Thus far, the 5 hearings have simply said, we can't do it. Well, but the law says you shall do it. So we're now looking at how can this be done, or should it be done at all, and can it be done wisely? Clearly, in this region, we have Travis Air Force Base and Beale Air Force Base, both of which are crucial to any planning that you're going to do for the military and the nation's security looking into the future. For example, Beale is all about ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. In other words, knowing what's going on around the world. If you want to go after the terrorists, you've got to know where they are. the assets that are at Beale, the U-2, the Global Hawk, are the ways in which we see what is going on. We also know that at Travis Air Force Base you have mobility. That's the big C-5s, the C-17s, the kind of plane that my colleague here flies. Those machines are for moving men and equipment around the world. We know that no matter what strategy is going to be employed in the future, you've got to be able to get there. You've got to get there fast, you've got to get there with the right men, the right equipment, the right women. So that's the two issues that are critical to this issue and to this district. In looking at these things, the sequestration is going to be debated heavily in Congress over the next several months. For me, we have to be very wise about any cuts that's going on in the military, and you have to look at these in the context of this nation's security. Surely there are things that can be cut. Surely there are things that are wasteful. Surely the procurement programs can be wasteful, and some are. So you have to look for efficiency along the way. That's my job, and that's what I will be doing as a member of the House Armed Services Committee.
Do we have an order?
No, it's just raise your hand, and when I call on you, we'll go. Eugene?
As I stated earlier, this is not a time to be cutting back on the military. With China and Russia building up, Iran and North Korea, and the stretching of legs to see how far they can get away and what they can get away with, it's just not a time to be cutting back. The bigger issue is, the reason that we're having to cut back on the military is because of something automatic that went through because Congress didn't get their budget passed. They haven't done a budget in 3 years. The budget is something that they're supposed to do. They haven't done it. What is Einstein's definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, you expect a different result. If you elect the same type of people, you're going to get the same kind of result. If you want to get the budget done and get people in there working together and get the budget that you need for the military, you need people that are going to get in there and agree and get things handled and put America's well-being ahead of politics.
Rick?
Yeah, thanks. This is one I'm intimately familiar with, and that sequestering idea that was passed, one of the most irresponsible things that our Congress has ever done. And as your congressman, I would have voted no on it. Now that it is a reality, last year, this week, at this time, I was dealing in my unit as the commander with the budgetary shutdown, preparing for no dollars to come in. It's tough to run a war on no dollars, let me tell you. Or do all the things that we do back here during a war when Congress is not doing their job. One of the reasons why I'm running is to make sure our military can do their job and protect us. As a government, that's our #1 priority, national defense. And this sequestering that was implemented into this bill was irresponsible and needs to be fixed. There are ways to save money in the military, absolutely. Again, I run these military budgets. I know where the waste is. I know where we spend money that we shouldn't. I understand combat readiness. I understand strategy. I understand how to spend our military dollars a lot better than we are. Unfortunately, when you take a big axe and whack off a huge trunk of our budgetary tree, as Congress has done, we can't do the job of protecting you the way we're supposed to. This was irresponsible, should have never happened. Now, in the military, am going to have to deal with their inability to do their job. Makes it tough for me to do mine. Sequestering was wrong. We need to fix it. Congress needs to make a way to fix it. One thing you do in the military, we spend money at the end of every fiscal year just to make sure we don't lose it for next year. Take away that fear. Take away that budgetary practice. We save 5, maybe 10%, $30, $60 billion in the military just by spending smarter, by doing a 2-year military budget, and I need a lot more time to explain this, but you do a 2-year military budget where money carries over that you don't lose. You don't have to worry about losing your money. Ways to save military spending, not the way they've done it this time.
What do you think the message that was sent to our enemies overseas was when this sequestration was used as a political football? One of the most irresponsible parts that was passed. Of course, all departments have things that can be cut. There's areas, like in all our personal lives, where budgets can be cut. But putting our military personnel and Beal and Travis in shackles because the members of Congress can't pass a budget without using this political football is completely irresponsible and should not be tolerated. I absolutely agree with what Mr. Tubbs and what Mr. Ray said. There is ways to fix this, and it has to be addressed immediately, not to continue to send this message to our enemies abroad. This cannot be tolerated.
Okay, thank you all. Next question. Do you support the Keystone Pipeline? Why or why not? Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, I do support Keystone Pipeline. One, because we need additional oil. Two, we need to increase our oil, not just at home, but from friendly sources like Canada, who's always been a great ally of ours. Three, it would create a great number of jobs. And if the idea is that we can't build the Keystone Pipeline because we can't, and I've sat down with people that are, have an environmental background, because there's an environmental concern, you can't tell me that American architects, contractors, and engineers can't build a pipeline that will work. They're the best in the world. Yeah, there's no question. They definitely work.
Keystone Pipeline. It wasn't too long ago that we were having the same argument over an Alaskan pipeline. Well, it was built, and one of the concerns about the reindeer up there, which, Christmas is my favorite time of season. I wouldn't want to hurt the reindeer either. But they actually had increases of populations around the pipeline. The environmental concerns about that pipeline never were played out. They never developed. Now we're having another environmental concern over the same pipeline. Now, okay, I understand risk and managing risk and saying, hey, we better talk about this and make sure we're doing the right thing before we go forward with something like that. But we've already shown that it works. We've already shown that it's not destroying the environment. Yes, we can do things smartly. I know there's a problem in Nebraska, worrying about if there's a leak, putting oil into the water table out there. And we're smart. We're 21st century Americans. The best smart, like Congressman said earlier, the best research and development. We've got the best minds. We can figure this out. The message that came from our president and the administration was, no, we can't do that, environmental concerns. No. Those are jobs. Those are ways of making gas cheaper. Those are ways of help building our infrastructure in this country. The answer should have been yes, we will make a way for that to happen, whatever the obstacles are. I believe in Americans. The answer should be yes, we can do that. Yet the answer was no, we're not going to do it. And you had pipe fitting union members start to break away from the president. Remember I mentioned I'm a union member? The first thing to be pro-union is to be pro-job. That pipeline is pro-job.
Kim.
Yes, I absolutely support the Keystone Pipeline, and I believe that it should have been allowed to go forward. The environmental issues that are being brought up and talked about were addressed in a very comprehensive NEPA document. The National Environmental Protection Agency, through the Department of Interior, did extensive environmental review on this project. The no that was given to this project was at the end. After the project jumped through all the hoops, just very similar to our CEQA process in California, that they were required to jump through in the NEPA process. They did all the mitigation. They put all the plans in place and all the security measures. They planned this project for almost a decade and went through the environmental process just as any other business would do. And they were told no at the end for political reasons. Jobs were lost, and a resource of oil was also lost for political reasons. When you are a business that is giving a playing field to work from, and then that playing field is changed on you midstream, 3/4 of the way, then all the way to the end, that's regulatory policies that are getting in the way of this country's growth and prosperity.
Keystone Pipeline will be built. And when it's built, it ought to be built with American-made steel and American-made workers along the way. One of the things that we need to understand is the way in which this issue has evolved. In fact, the environmental document said there was a serious problem in a certain portion of Nebraska, across the sand hills and the underground water in that area could potentially be contaminated, and that serves 4 or 5 different states. The issue was unresolved. That issue had not been completed, and in fact, at that point, Nebraska was not yet in support of the pipeline. The Republican Congress jammed the president and said, you must make a decision in 30 days, or actually about 45 days. The president said, we're not going to build a pipeline until this environmental issue has been resolved. The environmental issue is now in the process of being resolved. It appears as though Nebraska has decided to move the pipeline in a different direction. The other part of this is, where's the pipeline going? The pipeline's going to Port Arthur in Texas. Happens to be where they expect to export the oil. A lot of this oil isn't going to wind up in the United States. It's going to be refined in Texas and be part of that 26 million gallons of gasoline that is exported from the United States every day. So let's understand what is happening here. The pipeline will be built. The kind of amendments that I have proposed are make it in America. Use American-made steel, American-made pipe, and do it safely. I think if those all come together, this pipeline will eventually be built, and we ought to put one more amendment in, and that is, it's not to be used for export. It's to be used to meet the American domestic demand.
Thank you all. The last question from the Government Affairs Committee is, how do you propose we finance or fix Social Security for future beneficiaries? Rick.
Sure. Again, I said in my opening statements, I'm going to give you some solutions. Social Security is a program. I have a 99-year-old grandmother, and she just turned 99 April 1st. I look at that, and I say that was a successful program, because that's how my grandma and grandpa lived after my grandpa retired. And I want to see Social Security saved. I want to see it there for my mom, who's getting it right now. I want to see it there for me. I want to see it there for my kids. But the status quo of Social Security will not work. It needs to be addressed. Now, there's a lot of inefficiency in Social Security. We need to address those. When you're put on disability for a drug addiction, and you're in prison for that drug addiction, and you're getting Social Security, that's money being wasted. We need to say that one. Another thing is, we've got Americans today living much longer than they were, able to contribute to society and the economy much longer than they did in the past. When Social Security was originally passed, way back when, before I was born, it was designed for the living age back then. It's 21st century, ladies and gentlemen. There are new realities. We need to increase the age of Social Security retirement. My initial solution is to increase it to 67 for initial benefits and 70 for full. Do that. Give us another 4 or 5 years to make it solid. Take that time frame away so we can let those workers continue to contribute. I feel pretty good at 44 years old. Our congressman over here is doing pretty good at 66. We can work till 70. It doesn't, and the alternative is we can't afford it in its current condition. No way my kid sitting in the front row here is going to be able to receive this Social Security. Probably not me. We have to make some real changes to make it affordable so it's there for our future. That's one solution to do it.
Kim.
Well, first off, we can't keep putting this issue off. We can't keep planting this future, I was going to say future generations. We can't keep planning this a year or 2 years down the road. It's something that needs to be addressed now. We can address it in a tiered system, the same as we can with Medicare, stepping down the way funds are taken in and benefits are paid out so that our current seniors who are on it are not harmed. That we keep the promises that were made to people who are using it and to people who are going to be using it in a very short time frame, within 5 to 10 years. We can't pull the rug out from underneath those folks. That's just not fair. But what we can do is start tearing it down. We have to start looking at the abuse and the fraud and the waste in the system, look at how it's bureaucratically set up, cut administrative costs and overhead costs, and restructure how the tax and the income is coming in to finance it. It is absolutely something we can do as long as we are proactive and don't put it off any longer.
Let me be very, very clear about this. We're not going to allow Social Security to be destroyed. We're not going to allow Social Security to be privatized. I know from my family's experience and the experience I've had working across the entire state of California that Social Security is the bedrock foundation for millions and millions of Californians and tens of thousands in this district. The average Social Security benefit is less than it's about $17,000 to $18,000 a year. That's not enough for a family to live on. But there are those in Congress today that would take Social Security and hand it over to Wall Street. Now, if you trust Wall Street, this is a particularly good idea. But if you're like me and you don't trust Wall Street at all, then you better not let this happen. We will not allow Social Security to be privatized. It is essential. It is something that every working American, man and woman alike, has paid into their entire career. And when they retire, that is their benefit. That is what they count on for the foundation of their retirement. Now, is Social Security bankrupt? It is not bankrupt. There are those scaremongers around that would say it is. It's not. It's good for several years. The most important thing immediately about Social Security is to get people back to work. If you put people back to work, you're going to see that money begin to flow into Social Security once again. In addition to that, we know that in the future, as we have twice in the past, made adjustments to Social Security. No way should we allow it to go to 70 years. That is a significant reduction of about 1/3 of the value of Social Security to every retiree. That's not fair, that's not right. There are other ways that this can be dealt with, like how do we pay for it? Who pays for it? How much is paid for it? We can make those adjustments over time. It is not an immediate crisis. It's a manufactured crisis by those that want to give Social Security to Wall Street so that they can manipulate the retirement funds of our seniors.
I also don't trust Wall Street with the retirement money. But I had an interesting question at one point. Since all these people today that they're talking about, they're discussing Social Security going bankrupt, I thought, well, where did that money go? They've all been paying into it all this time. And I did some research and found out in the 1960s, around 65, 67, somewhere there, I don't remember the exact year, Congress raided the Social Security account, according to the general fund, they took the money. So, no, I don't trust Wall Street. I also don't trust the government. If Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, in its current form, are on a schedule to go bankrupt between 2020 and 2025, there's absolutely no question that we need to make a change. If you're riding on the Titanic and you look 5-6 miles out and you see the iceberg, would you have to be insane not to turn the wheel? What we have to do is get people to work together, and I have not read the Republican on that, whatever, I apologize. I haven't read that, the Republican bill, but we need to sit down and take a look at it. If it doesn't work, then we need to fix it. But we have to do something. There is no option. You've got, on the one hand, you've got people over here, you've got Republicans over here going, well, we want to try this. And on the other hand, you've got the Democrats going, no, that doesn't work. Okay, fine. Well, what's your idea? Both sides have to chip in, have to work here, and we'll find somewhere, Americans are pretty smart, we can find somewhere to come to a conclusion if the two sides will start working together. But that's the key, they're going to have to start working together. For years, they haven't done a budget. They're supposed to do one every year. They can't even get a budget out. We need new people with new blood that are willing to sit down and work and put people before politics, put country before party.
Thank you, candidates. We'll now take a 5-minute break before we begin with the audience questions.
moderator this evening, our Governmental Affairs Committee Chairman, Dr. Peter Jim.
Good evening. Is that on? Okay. I will read, talking to the candidates. Now, I will read each question, and it is directed to a specific candidate. He or she will answer. If it's directed to any candidate, all of you may answer, and to indicate your desire to do so, raise your hand. Remember, your responses are limited to 2 minutes. Our timers are in the back. And they will signal you when you're getting close to the 2 minute limitation. Okay, so I'm just going to start at this end and work that way. So the first one is for John, and it's a little bit lengthy, but I'll read it rapidly if I can. I have heard that you speak to the pollution caused by coal, that a coal-fired power plant produces 60 pounds of mercury a year, and that is 2.7 ounces a day distributed daily over a large area, not concentrated in a single location. My question is, if you're looking out for the middle class and poor child in a grossly populated area, have you given any thought to the inflation it will cause to manufacturing, food producing, and energy costs, and loss of job and disposable income to these families? We have the cleanest burning coal-fired power plants in the world, yet Green Vision doesn't seem to see that due to the cost increases in manufacturing in our company, manufacturing has failed to places like China who burn higher sulfur and coal with little pollution controls. Can you see that you're hurting not only America but the world?
Thank you very much for the question, whoever wrote it, and thank you for presenting it to me. The facts are very, very, very clear. Coal-fired power plants are a very, very serious problem. In the pollution that they emit into the surrounding area, in the fly ash that is then produced, we've had numerous problems over the years. What is actually happening is a new infrastructure is being built. We in America are actually shutting down the old coal-fired power plants, in part because of the emissions and the regulations that prohibit the continuation of poisoning our children with arsenic and mercury. It doesn't take much mercury to cause a real serious problem in young children, and in the other kinds of pollution, including carbon dioxide. So what are we going to do? What we're doing is we're repowering those power plants using natural gas, which is now in plentiful supply. In fact, today natural gas dropped below $2,000 a thousand cubic feet. $2 for 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas. The lowest it's been in the last 2 decades. Why? Because we're very, very successful in the United States in developing our natural gas industry, using, as I said earlier, technology that was actually developed by the U.S. government, the U.S. Geological Survey, called fracking. We're seeing that happen. It is an enormous strategic asset for America. And as we repower these power plants, we reduce the carbon dioxide by nearly 2/3. We reduce and we almost totally eliminate all of the other contaminants, arsenic and mercury and the like. However, understand this. The natural gas producers, that is the industry itself, is now in the process of trying to export natural gas. 10 years ago we were talking about importing. Now they're talking about exporting. Why? So that they can enjoy the world's price, which is 4 to 5 times higher than the United States. We cannot let that happen.
I think they changed the channel.
Something happened. Okay, so this would be for Eugene.
Yes, sir.
My wife and I lived in Dixon. We were both school teachers. In 2010, we paid 13% of our income in federal taxes. 2010, Mitt Romney made $21 million. He paid the same 13% in federal taxes. Do you feel this is fair? If yes, why? If no, what's the solution?
How much did Romney make again? How much money did he make?
Oh, I don't know, 21 million.
$200 million.
More or
So
less.
he paid what? He paid over $2 million in taxes?
13%.
Right, 13%, so he paid over $2 million. That's a lot of money in taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the next one is President Obama has proposed reducing our nuclear arsenal by 80%, leaving the U.S. with about 300 warheads, about the same as Pakistan. He also has proposed a major cut in missile defense efforts. Do you agree with those proposals?
Okay, this is another one that I will enjoy answering because it's kind of in my wheelhouse. We heard President Obama explain to President Medvedev that after the election I'll have more flexibility to discuss missile defense. I don't really know what he meant by that. But I guarantee you if he is negotiating in the best interest of the American people, he would win support by negotiating now and not waiting till after the election. Nuclear weapons is a horror. It is something that some of us grew up with and knew what would happen if we released them. That whole mutual assured destruction strategy that really worked through the Cold War, labeled MAD for a reason. I don't want to see a nuclear war future for my country. I've raised my hand to give my life for this country if necessary. Don't want to do that. I like what Patton says, make the other guy give his life for his country, right? But unilateral, de-arming, doing it, leading the way, and opening up America to greater risk when you have rogue nations like North Korea and Iran developing nuclear weapons, this is not the time to be weak. It never is the time to be weak. But especially now, we need to be strong. Oh, I like the idea of less nuclear weapons in our future. Do it in a way that still protects America, with guaranteed reductions across the board everywhere. Make sure this missile defense system that everybody made fun of Ronald Reagan as Star Wars, this stuff works. I deliver some of these missiles in my C-17. This stuff works. If North Korea launched something at us, we have a good chance of defending ourselves against it, a really good chance, and not having that nuclear bomb drop on us. If Iran follows through with their idea of wiping Israel off the face of the earth, we've given or worked with Israel to give them a missile defense shield to protect them. It is the right way to go forward in implementing that kind of stuff and not reducing it. Thank you.
Question? Can I respond to that question also?
But when your turn comes around, you can bring something up, Kim, you speak of deregulation often. Will you give us 2 examples of regulations you would do away with and the reasons why they were regulated in the first place?
2 regulations I would do away with. Well, I think a broad brush stroke on that one, first off, would be we need to take a break from introducing additional regulations. 10,000 new rulemaking procedures came out in the last 2 years alone. So it's not just 1 or 2 individual ones that need to be immediately repealed. We need to take a break, get the economy back on track. We live in one of the cleanest, safest countries in the world, so we need to look at it as a whole. But let's look at one from the Environmental Protection Agency in particular. NEPA and the Clean Water Act regulates bodies of water in the U.S. There's a word in that regulation. It's called navigable. That gives definition to streams, rivers, creeks, drainage ditches, any body of water that's flowing that is considered navigable by the U.S., by EPA. They want to remove, the administration and the Department of Interior want to remove the word navigable from this definition of Clean Water Act. That means that all bodies of water would be regulated under certain provisions of the Clean Water Act, and federal permits would be required to do any type of project or work in these bodies where water isn't even flowing at times. Now, I don't want dirty water any more than the next person, and I don't want to ruin our environment. But taking a break and pulling back and not going so far in one direction without considering the economic impacts to what we're doing to this country is unacceptable.
Let's ask this question to everyone, starting with John. If Iran or North Korea develop nuclear capabilities, are you going to invade? If not, what will you do?
North Korea does have nuclear weapon capability. There's a question whether they can deliver those weapons in a missile, and that's now in process of being determined. We have to continue pressure on both Iran and on North Korea using diplomacy and using sanctions. Both of those have the potential to work. An invasion of North Korea is a real serious step, and we ought not take that. With regard to Iran, it doesn't make sense at this time to do anything to bomb Iran and to try to stop that, because it would simply drive them further underground and make them even stronger committed to developing a weapon. To go back to a couple of issues that I would mention, the President has not at all suggested 300 nuclear weapons. That simply is not the case. There are continuing negotiations that will go on into the years ahead dealing with nuclear weapons. We've had success all the way back to John Kennedy about reducing nuclear weapons, and that's in all of our interest. We need to be very cautious about this. I happen to be on the subcommittee of the House Armed Services Committee that deals with nuclear weapons. And I'm telling you, there is no proposal to go to 300 nuclear weapons by anybody in the administration. With regard to regulations, let me give you two examples of what we can do to reduce regulations. First of all, a bill that became law just last Wednesday, the President signed it into law, called the Jobs Act, reduces the regulations on companies, small companies that want to go public. Great idea. I voted for it. Actually, was part of the team that put together that legislation to reduce the regulations so that small companies can go public. And finally, the EPA did propose that dust from agriculture be regulated. I voted for a bill that said, no, you're not going to regulate dust from agriculture. So there are things that we can do to reduce regulations, and with regard to nuclear weapons and Iran and North Korea, move cautiously, move strongly, but continue the movement as we are now doing.
Well, that's a fine line. Sanctions, as I recall, I mean, just in what we've watched, sanctions don't necessarily work. They don't stop it, because there's always some country that for the right price will try to get them what it is that they need. I think the problem that we've got is that this is not an easy subject, because you have the leaders of two countries, one who is young and inexperienced and probably volatile, and the second one who's crazy. I'm not so sure there's a big difference between the two when it comes to that. We need a military presence in the area. I think we've definitely got to sit down and have a talk with China. China's got to befriend the enemy at the same time. They're an interesting country with us. We do a lot of work with them, but at the same time, they have spies that try to steal information from us. And I'm not sure that we can really count on them. But if it comes down to it, where if Iran or North Korea, if it comes down to it where they are at a point where they become nuclear capable of the ability to either attack Israel or North Korea, in their case Japan or South Korea, I'm not so sure you have a choice. If a man lives across the street from you and he's building a gun and he keeps telling you that he's going to shoot you as soon as he gets that gun built, do you wait for him to finish the gun? I'm not so sure that that's an intelligent move.
Yeah, the question, should we invade? Gosh, I've just fought 2 wars, 2.5 if you count Libya, for 10 years. I'm the last guy that wants to invade anybody. However, I'm the first guy to raise my hand and go if we need to. 21st century. Somebody somewhere in this world that doesn't like us is going to get a nuclear weapon at some time. With the technology growing, if they don't figure out how to do it by themselves, they'll buy it from somebody. With Pakistan scientists selling the technology to other places, it's going to happen. We have to be ready for that. It goes back to that original question I was just asked. A 21st century solution is not to just invade every country we don't like what they're doing. Not the right way to go about it, and very impractical. And in this tactical environment of, well, if you're going to do this to me, Israel went and bombed an Iraqi nuclear site in 1983. That worked back then. Now Iran is building all their bunkers down low, and it's very difficult to bomb them and to solve the problem. We'd have to take over that large country of Iran to stop it. We have to have ways to prevent their missiles from hitting us or hitting our allies. And that's missile defense, 21st century technology. We just gave up on the 747 with a big laser. Sounds like Star Wars, sounds like science fiction. But a big laser that would shoot these missiles down, an airborne laser flying around. Geez, when I read about that, I thought, oh, thank God, that'd be really good. But we gave up on it. You know, this missile defense that we're talking about. These anti-missile missiles, shooting things down, Patriot missile batteries. That is a 21st century solution for these rogue nations, these terrorist entities, these possibilities that we're going to face. I never want to see a nuclear bomb go off in America or in one of our countries. But to try to invade to stop it, that's smashing a little acorn with a huge mallet, when we can do it a lot smarter, a lot safer, and wiser by matching the technologies over here, and a lot better. So missile defense is the answer for these type of threats in the future. Thank you.
Someone asked me when I first decided to run what was going to be the most difficult decision I thought I would have to make as a member of Congress. And that decision would be sending one of our children, one of our wonderful men and women, to war, to possibly come home wounded or not come home at all. My grandfather was a veteran of World War II. He was actually kept on the march for the last several weeks of that war. My dad is a veteran of Vietnam. I've grown up with a very strong sense of service and how important it is. But at the same time, we have to protect our country. Now I can't sit here today and make the judgment call, should we, or should we tomorrow, or should we 30 seconds before we think that gun's going to be built, invade. But I can tell you, I would put all of my resources into making the best and most informed decision possible prior to sending your sons and daughters, my son or daughter, into a situation where they could possibly lose their life. But we cannot take these threats lightly. Sanctions need to be firm, they need to be enforced, and they need to actually do some damage once they are put into place. And we need to continue to make those hard choices and not just make the threats, but follow through. We have to protect our allies and we have to protect our borders. And unfortunately, that comes at a cost to this country.
Okay. We have another one here that can easily be given to all four of you, and it says, our president and his Democrat colleagues are touting the buffet rule to solve our financial problems. The buffet rule increases taxes on the wealthy.
Warren Buffett.
Beg your pardon?
Warren Buffett. The Buffett rule.
Oh, the buffet. Wow, looks like a buffet. We call it a buffet.
That was with the Las Vegas thing.
Thank you. That's good old work. The Heritage Foundation has estimated that the increase in tax receipts will amount to approximately $45 billion. However, the president's budget runs trillions of dollars in deficit every year. So, how is increasing taxes on the wealthy going to solve our problem? I guess what they'd like here is, what's your solution? Answer that. How's it going to solve our problems? How are you going to solve our problems? So we can start with John.
I have the last one. Why don't we start at the other end or rotate it?
Would you rather
Let
go
me
back
have
and
you start.
start? Because,
Dr. Tim, Dr. Tim, I'll take
that's
it.
good.
Yeah, we're okay, that's only fair. That's only fair. I heard a good explanation the other day from someone that sits down and works numbers. And they said that the increase of $40 to $45 billion in taxes would be adjusted if, basically, when you start figuring it versus our money that we spend. It would be the same as if you have a guy who makes $2,400 a month, but he spends $3,700 every month. The increase in tax gives him an extra $40. It doesn't really solve the problem. That's the first issue. The second issue, and I think one that we really need to keep track of here, when we start adding tax to some of these really wealthy individuals or wealthy folks that own corporations or own businesses, the vast majority of people that are going to get hit with this tax are not the ultra wealthy. They are the people who actually own small businesses, and they'll be taxed as individuals. It's not a real benefit. You know, they're the ones who are going to be paying, and that money that they're paying in taxes is money that they could use to hire, another employee. And the other problem is, when you deal, since most of the businesses are going to be the ones that are getting hit, you have to remember, a business can't operate for very long if they're losing money. So if the business is losing money, what do you think they're going to do to the price of the product? They're going to raise it. Who buys the product? There's more of the middle and lower class than there are of the upper class. So the vast majority of the product is going to be bought by the middle and lower class. Who's really paying that tax increase? It isn't the upper level at all. It's the middle and lower class, once again, going to be hit with the tax.
Sure. The Warren Buffett rule plays on something that's happening in this country that I detest, and that's class warfare. In America, the American dream is to go from somebody like me, growing up on welfare, to somebody like Warren Buffett. I got a ways to go to get there, but I've come a long way. And this idea of, we need to soak the rich to pay for irresponsible government is just the wrong way to go about it. So premise-wise, I kind of don't like the idea of this class warfare and saying we need to take more from those rich folks to make sure that we're taking care of spending in government. Our government spends too much money. We don't need to raise taxes to pay for irresponsible government. Now, again, the Warren Buffett rule is comparing apples and oranges. Capital gains tax is one of those flat taxes in the country. The more you make in capital gains, the more you pay in capital gains tax. That's a progressive tax. Now, income tax, on the other side, is a progressive tax. The more you make, the higher percentage of your income you pay. Back to some numbers. Remember, I got a degree in math. I like numbers. The top 1% in this country pays 37% of the taxes, income taxes. The top 25% wage earners in this country pay 85% of the income taxes. How much more is fair? I do understand what Warren Buffett is trying to say. Is that why is it okay for millionaires to not pay as much percentage-wise as those that aren't making $1 million? I certainly understand that. The rich in this country, the ones that make more, should pay more in taxes, but do it in a graduated way. One of the ways I think we should go forward on some of this stuff, one of the reasons why the rich don't pay as much taxes is because we have a 20,000 plus page tax code with a lot of loopholes and incentives that they take advantage of, paid for by lobbyists. Let's get rid of some of those and make the tax code more fair for everybody by getting rid of that stuff. That's how I would go forward as your congressman.
$45 billion. We have over a $16 trillion national deficit. For every dollar we spend in this country, we're borrowing 41 cents, if not more today. This is not going to address the issue of taxing and spending. We have corporate loopholes on taxes that need to be addressed first. We cannot tax the builders and the producers of this country. In the last 2 years, we've slipped from being number 1 in manufacturing in the United States to number 2. We are no longer number 1 in manufacturing in the world. We're number 2. That should concern all of us. Taxing the rich is not going to bring the dollar amounts that this government wants to collect to grow the government larger. for where we need to be. We can't continue to tax additional just to grow government larger. The issue has to be addressed. And I would love, as I'm sure many of you would, to be in that 1% bracket. I'd be happy to pay the percentage of tax I have to pay if I was in that 1% bracket. But I'm in that next bracket, or probably a bracket or two below that, frankly. And I know that we have to all pay our share. But as someone said, I think as Eugene said earlier, with rising tides, all ships rise. It's not our job to pull the highest wage earners down. It's our job to bring the middle class and the lower earners up.
National tax policy in 2 minutes. See how far we can go. GE 2 years ago paid no taxes, paid almost no taxes last year, and probably won't pay any taxes this next year. ExxonMobil, no taxes 2 years ago, less than, I think just a little over $10 billion, excuse me, $10 million in taxes in this last year. Romney, 21 million, pays 13% tax. Something's terribly wrong. There's a terribly wrong system here in which there is class warfare, and I'll tell you the middle class is losing the war. Take a look at all the economic statistics. The middle class has seen no growth, actually seen a decline in the numbers, and also seen a decline in their wealth. The top 2 to 5% have seen enormous growth. Everybody knows that the corporate executive 40 years ago made 40 times more than the line worker. Today they're making 300 or 400 times more. Something's terribly wrong here. We need to adjust our tax policy. The Buffett rule is very clear. It simply pushes aside all the deductions and says, whatever your income is, you're going to pay 30%. Now the tax rate happens to be 35% today, with all the deductions. So is that fair? I think it would be fair. We ought not increase the taxes on the middle class, and in fact, we've made major efforts to reduce taxes on the middle class. We've done it in several ways. The payroll tax reduction is in place today because of my vote and the vote of my colleagues. We reduced taxes on businesses, and we increased taxes on corporations that would offshore jobs. They previously got $12 billion a year in tax reduction for every job they offshore. We're in the process of trying to right this problem, but we've got a long, long way to go. And when we get a proposal, as we did this last week, 2 weeks ago, to reduce the taxes on the top income, those who earn more than $1 million a year, by $394,000, something is terribly, terribly wrong. That bill passed the House of Representatives.
Okay. No, we're not going to do any more written ones, although we have a half dozen or more here, so if we run out of oral questions, we can come back to them, but we will start oral question portion of the program. To the audience, we invite you to come up to the microphone over there on the far left, give your name, and then ask your question. Please don't editorialize. Simply ask your question. Refrain from any personal or extraneous remark. Okay, Pam, we'll line up. While she's walking over here, I really think that the buffet rule sounds a lot better.
All you can eat.
I missed dinner, so I want to pay for it.
Now, this is a question for all of you, and this deals with something that we've heard by the way I'm paid, Phelps Kaler, and I live here in Dixon. Lately, many candidates all over the country have talked a lot about the so-called family values of birth control, marriage, and school vouchers. What role do you believe the federal government has in these topics? Thank you.
Could you go those three again, please? So I can write them down.
Birth control, marriage, and school vouchers.
That's all over the place. I'll go first. First of all, Kay, Dixon Citizen of the Year. I believe our congressman gave her that award. If I remember correctly. It's great. family values. You know, I started out by saying I'm a family man. I'm in this for my kids. There's a lot involved in that. The family is the basic unit to society. And strong families make a strong society, a strong country. We have to strengthen our families, support our families, encourage them. You went through 3 different issues there. First of all, birth control. And if it's any relation to the Rick Santorum, President Obama birth control issues, let me just say birth control is a 21st century way of family planning. Birth control in terms of prior to being pregnant birth control is the way I'll talk about that one. And when you talk about welfare reform, something that I would offer freely to our welfare recipients is birth control, so they don't have more children while they're on welfare to be burdens on the taxpayer society. Okay, on birth control. When you talk about marriage, something very important to me, being married to my wife for 23 years next month, did I say that? Again, it has to be encouraged. It's an issue that we talk about in California with Prop 8, which I supported. But I tell you, that is one of those issues that's very difficult. I have gay and lesbian friends. I have them working on my campaign. We see differently on that issue in some cases, but I'm willing to leave it in the state's purview, because when my wife and I were married, it was said that by the power invested in me by the state of California, I pronounce you man and wife. I'll leave it there. And then the third one was school vouchers. Holy cow, I am so for it. Okay, we homeschool our kids because our public school system in California, 46th, 47th, is not good enough for my kids nor yours. It needs to be a whole lot better. At the federal level, we need to push K through 12 down to the states, take it out of the federal level purview, repeal No Child Left Behind, and give it to the states. Let them do better at more of a local level. Thank you.
The role of federal government in birth control, marriage, and school vouchers. Birth control is an individual choice. It should be left up to the family or the person who's utilizing it. Marriage, in my opinion, is a states' rights issue. I support civil unions, but I value my right to be married to my husband above all things. School vouchers, I support. I believe we need to extremely rework the Department of Education at the federal level and bring it back down to a local and state level. Not every person is meant or wants to go to an academic 4 or plus year education. We need to start including more vocational opportunities. And we as individuals need to be able to choose the best path for our children and ourselves. And that's bringing it back down more into the local level and to the hands of the states. I think the broad brush strokes from the feds convolutes the issue and brings us into a place where we are not really serving the educational needs of our children.
There appears to be a national effort to use government to deny women the opportunity to have birth control. That's wrong and should not occur. With regard to marriage, the government ought not tell anybody who to marry or who not to marry. With regard to the voucher system, that's really a state issue. The federal government is not involved in the voucher system. The federal government does provide support for those low-income schools, for those kids that are handicapped in any number of ways. And the federal government does provide a lot of school lunch programs, around the nation. All of those are very, very important roles. With regard to the vouchers, it's not going to solve the problem. It probably will create far more problems because it will divide the community into those that are using the vouchers in the private school sector and those who do not have the opportunity to get there. Where vouchers have been in place, they've not worked particularly well. So we've got a real serious problem. I'm going to go back to the very first place I started this discussion, which is the discussion about those things that are critically important. Education being the first and foremost. The fact of the matter is that we're starving education. As a society here in California, we're giving up on education. We're not supporting education. In 1990, the state of California supported students at the University of California $15,000 per student. Today, it's just under $9,000 per student, constant dollars. It's an example of the way in which this state, and in the larger context, the United States, has backed away from the most important job-creating thing we can do, which is to educate the workforce. Vocational education, absolutely important. It's disappeared. Why? Because we don't support it with money. There's not sufficient money in the classrooms to do it. Change is critical. You have to be willing to change the system. Unfortunately, vouchers will not lead to the kind of changes that we need. It will probably lead to a series of other problems.
Interesting. I have heard no one nationally or even locally, Democrat, Independent, or Republican, say that they wish to deny a woman the right to have birth control. The only thing I've ever heard somebody say was, it's a choice. If you wish to do it, that's fine. It doesn't bother me, but I don't need to pay for it. It's your choice. Going to the gym is a healthy thing too, but I'm not going to pay for your gym membership. Now, there are some women that birth control helps with certain health issues. That's a different situation. School vouchers. School vouchers have proven to be extremely successful. There are a number of schools around the country that are producing at a much lower rate than the cost for public school. Their test scores are much higher. And they used to say, well, that's because you're getting the cream of the crop. You're just getting the kids that the parents are willing to get involved and help out. You're not getting the urban kids. But in New York and Washington, D.C., I believe, I watched a special on, it might have been San Francisco or Oakland, watching inner city schools set up off a voucher system. These kids come flat out of the urban ghetto. And these kids are tearing it up in school. And they're doing it for less money than the public school system costs. And they're paying their teachers more money. Marriage. I do not have a problem. I believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman. But I do not have a problem with civil union. Again, like Rick said, I have some friends. I have one friend of mine who is gay, atheist, and Democrat. And we argue over everything. But at the end of the day, we shake hands and laugh and go home and ride a barbecue and invite them because I like them. We've got a great sense of humor. Marriage, you've got situations like, for example, with the Trayvon murder case. This is terrible. But in Chicago, during that same week, 50 people were shot and 10 died. All black youth, black on black crime. There's a 70% out of wedlock birth rate in the inner city in blacks. There's no dad to figure out where this kid's going, who's running around with. There's no dad keeping track of the girls when the 25-year-old guy comes to date the 14-year-old girl. That's the problem. There's no father in the household.
Next question.
This is for all of you. Earmarks have gotten a bad name. They've fallen out of favor as a congressional tool. What techniques would you use to bring home the bacon? Or that is, how would you bring tax dollars back to your district?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of infrastructure items have been classified as earmarks, and I don't believe that to be the case. The transportation system. You go to the gas pump, you fill up your car, you pay the taxes. Those taxes go to the feds. They're meant to come back down to the state and the local transportation authorities that hire the contractors and issue the contracts to work on our interstate and our local highways. So I do not believe that infrastructure projects such as levee repair, bridge repair, are constituted as poor. We've gotten to a place where the structure of the commitments from the federal government to the local municipalities, and with my county supervisor hat on, I actually have very strong feelings about this. We have commitments from the federal government, such as secure rural schools, and fundings that were made, and commitment fundings that were made so that local government can operate. That's not pork. Our highway system, our infrastructure system, our water system, those are not pork items. The infrastructure in this state and in this country needs to be improved. We have some highways in this district, I'll focus on 12, that need to be addressed immediately. So bringing home the bacon, so to speak, for transportation projects, in my book, is not pork.
Yeah, earmarks. You know, one of the way politicians buy votes, as your congressman, you'll be sending your tax dollars. I brought this up last night in my opening remarks. I did my taxes 2 days ago, and I'm going to have to write a check this year. That's real money. that I've got to send to my congressman, I expect him or her to spend that money wisely, to do it in a way that's responsible. When we talk about earmarks, like one of the ones that went to Iowa to study pig odor, no kidding, that's pork. Okay? Earmarks need to see the light of day. They need to be debated. And earmarks at the federal budget level need to have a federal priority or service to the district. One of the things that I talk about, and this is good, about the water issue, to help solve the water issue. You know, being a leader is taking positions, offering solutions, and then defending them, taking risks. As we talk about the California water supply crisis, one of the solutions I'm offering, which I will be beat up on all day by a lot of people, but I'm offering it, is we need to build the Auburn Dam. We need to put all that water that we collect, or could be collecting every winter, behind that dam for increased supply for our delta, for our drinking water, for our agricultural industry. We need to solve that problem for everybody, not sacrifice one or two or three of them. We need to do that. Now that's an earmark, if you will, that I would like to get federal dollars for to help build. But it's going to help everybody in America, because the California agricultural industry serves everybody in America. That's something as a congressman I could defend, put out there at the light of day, and debate on the House floor and expect to win. Big odor studies, not so much.
President Obama, when he ran, said he was going to put an end to earmarks. And in his stimulus, his first major bill, it contained over 5,000 earmarks into the millions. Earmarks have become primarily used, in some cases, not at all, but in some cases, as political favors or rewards for your supporters or campaign donors. There's no question that we need to take a look at it to get it back on track to whatever it's supposed to be. The issue that I have with wiping them out, since I've not researched that, is that the founding fathers, and I would need to find out when earmarks came in to play. If they came in from the beginning, I'd have to take a real serious look to see what was their intent in the beginning, and is there a way to clean that up a little bit? Because the structure that they put in place with our Constitution and our political process has created the greatest nation in the history of the world. So before I dump it, I'd certainly like to see a whole lot more about what the original intent was, so I understand it to a better degree. As far as fighting for your district, I always find that I tend to be a positive person by nature, but I am a realist as well. And so I try to find, where can I find the thing that makes the most sense, that's going to give me the most positive result to get behind. So if there are things that we can do, and people are going to always be sending stuff from your district, things that you can do that will benefit not only your district, but maybe surrounding areas, things that are important, those are the things that you go to bat on, because then not only are you looking for dollars for those, but they're a benefit that makes sense.
In my first year in Congress, the earmarks did exist. We went through a process asking communities, this community and the other communities I represented, what's important to you? City councils will remember that I did that. They sent us the information. We then prioritized, and all of it was public. Who requested the money, what county, what city, what organization, it was all on the website. The new Congress came in and said no earmarks. So how do we bring home the necessary programs? For example, this community needs some rail crossings. Down in Fairfield and Vacaville, they need to build a train station. The airport, the Air Force Base needs a new facility. All of these things are there, so how do we make this work? Well, there's two ways to make it work. One just happened on the floor of the House about 2 years ago. And what happened there was an earmark came to the floor, and a debate erupted, and it was deemed by the majority to not be an earmark. Okay, so an earmark's no longer an earmark. That's one way to do it. The other way is more straightforward and has been used, it has to be used now. And that is, in the appropriation process, certain categories of appropriation are put in place. For example, transportation. I'm going to go back to the 5 things I talked about here. Education. It's crucial that we understand how we can change the education system. So we need to put into the education budget the kinds of research, how to use modern technology in the educational process. in infrastructure. Absolutely crucial that we have infrastructure available to us. So we need to put into the transportation bill the categories that deal with floods, dams, water projects, transportation projects, and the rest. If we're going to deal with national defense, we need to understand that the research that's going on at the laboratories is crucial for the earlier issue we talked about in nuclear weapons. How do we deal with nuclear weapons? What do we do about bringing them up to date and making sure that they're safe, secure, and reliable? These are all issues that require federal expenditures. Under the present rules, and that have been put upon us by the current majority, we can't do it directly. So we are now in the process of appropriating in Collins, and then we do what are called administrative earmarks.
Next question. Yes.
Hi. I have a question on where each candidate stands on Agenda 21 and ICLID. And the way I understand both of those issues, they take away American freedoms, our rights to property, except there's a water year points on that, and do you stand for Agenda 21 and ICLID? If you don't know about them, I'm really disappointed in my congressman because that's affecting everybody in America, all across America. So that's my question. Do you support it or do you stand against it?
I'm sorry, when you started your question, I didn't hear it, what you said at the outset.
Do you stand for Agenda 21 and ICLID, which is, in most people's, common people's perspective,
21?
Agenda 21 and ICLID. They really have an effect on people who are now informed of what's going on in our country and the war, move to socialism and less personal rights and property rights. This is something that has been signed on not just by this current administration but others, but right now it seems like you guys are going more forward with it than the last administrations are doing. So that's my question. If you're not informed about it, I'm really disappointed.
There is no Agenda 21 in the current Congress or in the current administration.
It's called the UN Agenda 21. We've signed on to support it. It's being used in this train station right down here, ABAG and everything else. We have a train station being built 5 miles from another train station.
This is, hold on for a second, just to let you know, this is not to be a conversation back and forth between one person who asks the question, and then you answer it. If you don't answer it to their satisfaction, that's too bad.
And it's too bad, I still have time. If the UN Agenda 21 is not the administration's agenda, nor is it the Congress's agenda. That's the answer.
I apologize, Les, to disappoint you, but I don't know what they are. The only thing I do know is that there is no way that I will approve the UN to have any authoritative position or final say on anything on the United States. The UN, half of their committees are headed by the worst offenders in the world of that issue. In women's rights, the countries that are on that committee are the worst offenders in the world. Now, America has done more in 300 years than all the nations and all the civilizations in history combined. There is no way that we should put anybody else in charge. They don't know how to run this country. And we're busy fighting with each other trying to do it half the time, but they definitely don't know how. And if they get any position where they can make a final statement or a final answer or have any control over us, it's not going to be for our benefit. So I apologize again, but that's the bottom line. The UN does not get a final say on anything.
I'll talk on that a little bit. You know, this Agenda 21 thing has really come up lately because of a lot of the things that environmentalists or certain CARB and different agencies are trying to push on us. It's very simple to go to figure out how to solve these problems. I mean, we've had city planning in this country way back to Thomas Jefferson. I fly airplanes for a living. I'm flying over these squares over the country all the time. Thank Thomas Jefferson for all those squares, trying to make the growing of our country make sense. Now, Agenda 21 comes in, And again, it comes from that UN way back in early 1992, 93, under the first Bush administration, and then on from there. And it seems to be taking away our property rights in favor of some global design for America. That's why it's important who you elect at every level, from your school boards through president. We got to make sure we're electing people that are putting America's interests first and who understand the Constitution and the role of property rights. If we understand property rights and we defend them under the Constitution, Agenda 21 will not be an issue in the growth and the planning for that growth of America. Thanks.
International interests should never dictate local land use policy. It should never dictate private property rights. The community of Dixon is very familiar with land use issues over the past 6, 7 years. You've had quite a number of interesting projects come your way. No foreign interest should be able to weigh in on your city council or your board of supervisors' ability to make findings, to approve or deny those projects. No international interest should force upon local jurisdictions a project that is neither economically viable or needed for your community. We need to put our local communities first and do what's best for our citizens and not have the interest of internationalism trump that.
Next question. You're up.
The budget deficit is a major problem here in the United States of America. And the Simpson-Bowles Commission called for a balanced approach, which means tax increases and cuts in entitlements. The President has called for a balanced approach. The Republicans in the House have called for a cuts-only approach. And if I'm not mistaken, the Ryan budget, cuts-only, has passed in the House. My question is to the people on the panel. Do they support the cuts-only philosophy of closing the deficit? Keep in mind, we have successful people in Dixon very hard. I just hired a state today, and we're at all the income tax entitlement, 962 very good, under 50,000. So if you support that's only a budget. What would you have and what effect is that going to have on people this?
Number one reason why you're going to need a conscience is not going to Washington balance budget. The $1 trillion borrowing of the years last. Now, constantly, no. We have to grow revenue and cuts in. Or grow revenues like growing jobs, not growing gas. I will, in reference to your question, say that there's a lot of tax movement
size and the scope of the federal government. And along with that comes cuts. At the same time, we need to get out of the way of the job creators. That in and of itself will raise revenue. Then we have the tax structure discussion. Those are the two most important items, and job creation being the first, adding revenue to the status situation, creating jobs, increasing revenue, and keeping the job we have. 800 million job loss, that's why we have a reduction in the tax bill because of the loss of jobs. That's why the middle class is being hit. We've heard several times tonight the beating the middle class is taking. It's not because of taxes, it's because of the loss of jobs. The reason why you can't make your payment, or I can't make my payment, is because my job is cut in half. My job is dramatically reduced over the past 5 years. That's not because of the tax issue, that's because of an economy issue where we're shrinking our private sector jobs and growing our government jobs. How we get this back on track and how we get the revenue in is by creating jobs and increasing the revenue for the ones we have.
We have time for one more short question, and then we'll have other remarks. Is one heard? The gentleman in the left.
I've heard the word fair thrown around quite a bit out there, especially from our friend Mr. Germanity. I'd like to know what his definition of fair is. How much of my money is it fair for the government to take? And I'd like a specific answer. What's fair? That's all, sir. Sure.
It is not fair to cut the money that parents need to take care of their children. That's not fair. It's not fair to take Medicare that we depend on for our seniors to be able to get health care. That has literally taken them out of poverty over the last 20 years and destroy that program. That is not fair. It is not fair to allow the oil companies to continue to take $5 billion a year of your tax money on top of what they are charging us at the pump while they are exporting 26 billion gallons of gasoline a day. That's not fair. To take your tax money and give it to big five oil companies. That's not fair. It's not fair to put a bill out of the House of Representatives that would hold down the middle class and take away their deductions that they depend upon, literally increasing their taxes. That's not fair. It is not fair to put in place and to put on the agenda a tax bill that will give billionaires a 35% reduction in their taxes while pushing the burden off to the middle class and the poor. That's not fair. But that's precisely what happened less than 2 weeks ago in the House of Representatives. Fairness is a tax policy that is a gradually progressive income tax system. So that those people that have great wealth and have acquired even greater wealth, so much so that in the last 20 years we have seen the greatest disparity of income between the super wealthy and the rest of the people. Never, only once before in America's history have we seen this kind of
need to chop the existing pie up into smaller pieces. Fairness. We need to grow the pie larger so that we all have the opportunity to succeed and be that 1%. We live in the greatest country in the world. People flock to this country for the opportunity to be in that 1%, because we still have that opportunity. If I work hard and innovate and decide what path I want to follow in life, I can be that 1%.
30 years we would ever achieve a balanced budget. That's not fair. So let's be wise about this. Be a more balanced approach. Reciprocity. Cassavity. I voted for $4 trillion of deficit reduction less than 9 months ago. I thank you for this evening. It's a great joy and a great pleasure and honor to be your congressman. And I'd like to continue that task.
One of the greatest things about running this emergency is being able to go to all of our different communities and meet all of the wonderful people who care so much about the future of this country. My goal is to be able to stand in front of all of you over the next several years and have all of you raise your hand and be affirmative that you believe we're leaving a better country to our children and our grandchildren. That is my number one goal. As a county supervisor and as a leader of the Rural Council of Rural Counties, which makes up 31 counties in the state, I've been able to reach across party lines and form coalitions to solve problems for our constituents. We have so many problems that we need to address, but we can't give up. We cannot sit idly by and watch this country go in the wrong direction. We cannot watch jobs slip out of our hands and reductions in jobs and job numbers from mandated policies that go on here. We've got to take control of our future. We've got to take control of what we want this country to look like. We've got to get national spending and debt again under control. We've got to get these taxing policies in line with the government services that we need from the feds. We've got to track, fine, and reduce government regulations that are costing us jobs and our industry growth. Again, we have to protect and enhance our national security, because if we're not safe, it won't matter if we don't have jobs. I promise to all of you that I will serve you. Born and raised in the Civil Congressional District, 3rd Congressional District, my family's been here for 5 generations. My roots are here. I'm not shopping for a congressional seat to run. I love every minute of being county board supervisor because I get to solve problems and I get to serve people like you. So I'm here asking your support, not only as you, but any member, and tell you what an honor it would be to serve all of you. Thank you for coming this evening.
A few years ago, I was a rugby game in our area. I was sent to some, go to a church, talked to several churches, but one church that were with me. And I went out to St. and I offered to teach these kids around for rules for that, keep the race up, and stay on ice. Just couldn't be pencil to start, and keep the race up in the background they were coming from, race for an issue. So I went out to church more about to these 7 days, these 3 days, they 2 went out one day. And then for that, I said, you better have progress achieved in these 300 years is the base that we developed. Look at approximately the last century. In the next 300 years, we can make progress that we have in our own imagination. Little things they did 100 years ago. Hell, as a woman, 30 years, she wrote the book. It's 95. There's the most young t-shirt and everything. In my positive attitude, if I'm solving problems the way we like to see our life, then I really appreciate our person in Washington. I'm not going there to fight. I'm going there to find to solve problems, find areas of room, and build solutions. I believe most of those back to us and we're at the end of the day. And I find when you lay out solution problems, you find that there's more of them like most people still look at our center. And then they find out how much they actually agree. They should come there to find and appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for coming tonight and paying attention. This has been great. I really do love this stuff. I alluded to it earlier, and I'll make this point and get out of the way right now. Amber Boone, the Democratic Campaign Congressional Committee, was the source of that initial quote of what I said about Medicare. And I want to make sure that if you hear anything from somebody other than me or my campaign, that come to the source, because the Congress and I disagree on enough about issues that we certainly don't need to make us up on each other. And I will say that Congressman Beverly is not the judge in disgrace, and I do not know him whatsoever. And we don't always control service. So I just want you to know, when you hear something about me, come to me, ask me, I'll listen to it before you let that go. All right, now tonight, I told you some very specific examples about some of the solutions that I want to see in this country. Give you an idea of what kind of representative I'll be for you and how I will go about fixing things. In my entire military career, my entire adult life, all I've been is about solving problems the best way possible for my unit, for my crew, for my team, and I want to do that for Americans in general. The future is bright, ladies and gentlemen. It is bright. We have a window right now, and we have a choice to make. The last great generation of this country was the World War II generation that sacrificed and won that war for us to make sure the American dream was there for us. And it has lasted a long time. We all benefited from their sacrifice. Well, thank God tonight, our sacrifice isn't a war we face where our brave men and women are dying for us. It's a war against debt. It's a war against too much government. It's a war against too much control of government. And yes, this future for our country, in my eyes, my vision for us, does ask pretty much every corner of our country as a national movement, what are they going to sacrifice in terms of their dependency on government to make sure that Americans are there for our kids and our grandkids? It is our time now, ladies and gentlemen. It is our time now to be those Americans that do what it takes to make sure the next generation is better off than us. And our fight is looking at how much we rely on government and how much it does for us instead of what the Constitution founded in this country to make the greatest nation in the history of humankind, and that's individual responsibility. Opportunity for us to succeed. My solutions are wrapped up in common sense, conservative, small government,